Welcome to another episode of the Angels Positivity and Love Show. Incredible guests the world over with amazing insights, experiences, and they're quite often giving service to others. They're working through their hearts, generally speaking, whether they're traditional healers, New York Times best-selling authors. We've had a White House physician to the U.S. president, the youngest Delta Force operator ever admitted to Delta Force, who was a naturopathic healer on the side, and many others. Many different hats, many different countries. Today, coming to us from the country of Colombia, but not much longer. We'll be in Spain soon and hopefully enjoying it quite a bit. We've got Rey Hernandez. Now, he's a leading UFO figure, a leading researcher in consciousness UFO studies. He's co-founder of the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Foundation for research into extraterrestrial and extraordinary experiences. Think of Dr. Edgar Mitchell as one of the grandfathers of this whole area of research, if we think of IONS and stuff like that. He's editor of the book Beyond UFOs, key contributor to another book, A Greater Reality. If it's experiences with the universe, with interdimensionality, with consciousness, with mankind's journey into their own hearts to be more aware. If it's about non-human intelligence, then that's Ray. He wears a lot of hats, and he's created his own or co-created with others the Consciousness and Contact Research Institute, CCRI. It's all a lot to take in. Just look at it this way. Ray has been around the block, loves exploring these topics and doing it in a very methodical, scientific way. We're talking a lot of modalities when it comes to science: neuroscience, astrophysics, quantum physics, and straight medicine, probably about 12 other areas. So this is the official approach to these topics. Ray, great to meet you today. Great to have you on the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for welcoming me.
Um, could you share with us something early in childhood, whether it was just cultural, TV, reading a book, a relative who influenced you with their story of what happened to them, or direct encounters? What got you interested in paying attention to mankind, consciousness, and then we might not be alone in the universe?
Well, for me, it wasn't an experience that occurred early in my childhood. Um, it was in 2012. I was already in my early 50s. I'm 69 years old now, when an energy being appeared in my living room and totally healed our 15-year-old dog who we were going to be euthanizing later in the afternoon. And my wife disappeared in front of me. The dog disappeared in front of me, and then put me to sleep for an hour. And when I woke up, the dog was running around the entire living room. And that was my very first experience.
Can you tell us just a little more before we jump to anything else? Um, I guess this will be the obvious one, but probably not the most important. Could you describe the being the best you can? Is it interdimensional? Did it look a certain way? Did you get a certain familiarity about it? What can you share with us?
Well, I don't call it a being. I call it a non-human intelligence. And what it was approximately 2 feet in width by about a foot and a half in height. It was pure energy radiating, multiple colors, semi-transparent, and but it definitely was an intelligence, and that's how it appeared to me.
Did you have any understandings, any communication, any telepathic or otherwise, or after the fact, or when you were sleeping, did you have any experiences?
Not with that first experience, but with subsequent experiences, yes, very much
Tell us,
telepathic communication.
tell us more.
Well, let me take you through the chronology here. Um, Before this experience, I had gone to the University of California at Berkeley for a PhD. Had gone to Cornell for a master's degree, and then after that, I became an attorney. So I have tons of academic experience, and uh, and so I was pretty much a rationalist. I didn't believe in any of these topics that you would explore on your show, and um, and then that day totally shook me to the core. And I continue to have pretty much nonstop um, experiences involving a manipulation of space-time, i.e., uh, out-of-body experiences, calling down UFO, what is commonly called the UFO, but I call them consciousness aerial phenomenon, um, interacting with non-human intelligence, near-death related experiences, being brought to other multidimensional realities. It was just nonstop. And in terms of the telecommunication, the communication aspect of it that you alluded to earlier, that began with my second experience when I called down the UFO that my wife had been interacting with for several months. And it was very long and detailed uh, and complex, that experience. But that's when I realized that what we're seeing are actually holographic projections. It's not a physical UFO or physical beings, that these are multi-dimensional holographic projections. And later on, numerous additional experiences led me to understand that we're living in a virtual reality, and that is both virtual and spiritual, that there is a mind of God behind all of this. And that was the NDE component of my experiences that gave me that insight. So very briefly, I gave you a quick synopsis.
Can we have you explain the near-death experience component? Was it one? Was it several over time? What was the story there?
Okay. Let me take you back a little bit. I had called down what is commonly called a UFO. I call them consciousness aerial phenomenon, and I've been doing that almost at will. And but these were huge objects. These weren't little specks of dots in the sky. These are monstrous objects, and many of the time with witnesses. The very first time, my 10-year-old daughter saw what we were watching, and then a couple and their 17-year-old daughter saw this as well. And what it was that I was waiting for a friend of mine to give me his parking tickets. I was going to consolidate all his parking tickets that he never paid, and he was put in jail for that. And then I said, look, oh, I'm so busy, my job, I never got around to it. Well, I need all the tickets. We do one motion, you go to court one time, and you work out a deal with the judge. But I need the parking tickets. So he calls me, he says, Ray, I got, the parking tickets. So you could do your motion. Now, just to remind your audience members here, I was an attorney for 25 years with the U.S. Department of Treasury. Very boring work. Before I was an academic professor for many years. And so that I'm waiting for this friend to come by because he says, I'm very close to you, and I'm waiting. And so I said, what the hell? My wife is calling down these UFOs. I just saw a video of this guy calling down a UFO, and let me give it a try. So it was pretty much killing time. It wasn't that I was serious about this. And then after like 15 minutes, I became more intense, much more sincere, much more loving, because this non-human intelligence behind what my wife was seeing in our living room healed our dog, who we were going to be putting to sleep. And our dog was like our family member. So I became very emotional, very sincere about it. And then after like 15 minutes of looking around, I just gave up. I said, what a crazy asshole I am trying to call down a UFO. And then All of a sudden I look up and there's this huge object, very low to the ground, roughly started at the treetop level of a palm tree, and it went up like about 100 meters, and it went back 600 meters, and was comprised of hundreds of oblong streaks of light that formed the whole shell of an object. And inside was all this white energy swirling around, very close to me. I could have gotten a rock and hit the bottom of this object. And then all of a sudden, I hear my daughter's voice. And so I turned around and my daughter wasn't there. And that's when I realized that this was a telepathic communication. And the communication was, Daddy, next time you guys see a UFO, you call me, Daddy. Don't forget, I want to see one too. Okay. Now, mind you, I never said that to my daughter. Okay. We never spoke to her about these things. This intelligence was able to upload my daughter's verbal communication and, cut it and piece it together to make it into a sentence. People don't have no idea just how complex this phenomenon is all about. And then, so I run to the window. I'm calling her to come outside. I'm telling her the UFO out here, so she runs. So now we got two people, watching this. And I'm cutting off a lot of details. It'll be just that one experience alone is 2 hours. And then my friend comes with his wife and their 17-year-old daughter. One thing that people need to understand, this UFO intelligence will not allow you to record up close. Okay? All of us had cell phones. This huge object was very low to the ground, yet no one recorded it. Okay? Is able to influence and manipulate your thoughts. For example, the next door neighbor was at the window seeing his next door neighbor and his 10-year-old daughter and 3 strangers looking right up above his roof. The natural thing to do would be for him to go outside. What the hell do you see on top of my roof? Or me to go over there and knock on his door. Come outside, watch this. That never took place. Okay. And so then they began to try to explain this away. Circus lights, headlights from the cars from the street behind are bouncing up from the clouds. It was a very, very cloudy night, and the clouds were very low to the ground. And just one explanation after another. And after about a minute, I just busted out laughing. And I communicated to this intelligence. And I said, you better come up with some better bullshit than this because my friends don't believe you. So immediately, and I don't know why I said that, okay? It's like it was natural. I've been doing this for years. It just came out. And then what we were watching was immediately deleted, okay? And replaced by something totally different. What we were all watching now were about 50 huge orbs, the size of a Volkswagen car, the size of a Volkswagen. And they were all blinking on and off, on and off, on and off, on and off, all over. Okay. And those orbs were very much lower. Remember, I told you that this was like about 100 feet up in the sky by like 600 feet back. No, this is now compressed, very low to the ground, much more compressed. And they were all blinking on and off, and they would take turns blowing up and get big. And then they would get small again. And then my friend stopped trying to explain it away because they knew that this was not natural, not normal. And then after like about 2 minutes, oh, Ray, we got work to do. We got to go. See you later. Bye-bye. And on my end, it was like, I didn't even question that they were leaving. Now it would be like, what are you, freaking crazy? You're watching a once in a lifetime experience and you're leaving, So remember I told you they're able to control and manipulate your mind. So then after they left, it was just my daughter and I for like another 10 minutes. We're watching this. 10 or 15 minutes. And then all of a sudden, I felt like I was being attacked by hundreds of mosquitoes. And I was slapping my arms, slapping my legs. I was wearing shorts and a short sleeve shirt. And 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 so I grabbed my daughter and I said, let's go inside. These mosquitoes are killing me. So then as we're going up the stairs, I'm telling my ex-wife, come on. Sí. Hold on a second. Sí, sí. Okay, ten cuidado. And that was my wife. And so let me see, where was I?
Mosquitoes.
The mosquitoes. So I'm telling my ex-wife what happened. And it seems like she was coming out of a trance. She goes, oh, how nice. Really weird. And then and so then as I'm telling her about the mosquitoes, my daughter looks up to me. She goes, Daddy, there were no mosquitoes outside. And when she said that, it was like the hypnotist snapped his finger and I woke up. I was like, holy shit, I realized I was in some type of a trance. For your listeners to better understand, it's like you're able to digest some of the information from your external reality, but you're not able to digest it. It only goes up to a certain point. I guess would be like in a dream-like state where you're waking up and like you're not fully awake. You're in between two different dimensions, that type of thing. That's how it was when you wake up. You're like, oh my God. So I quickly ran downstairs. I grabbed my camcorder and a professional camera, and I ran outside. Nothing was there. Okay, and so in reflection of that experience, there's many things I learned. One is I learned what was a telepathic communication. Okay, because it seemed like my daughter was right next to me because I turned around, and I've had that subsequently. And what it is it's these thought patterns that you hear them, but you don't hear them through your ears. You hear them in your mind. And it's very, very real, just like we're communicating now. I realized that that what we were watching, that was actually holographic projection, because I talked to this intelligence and I said, you better come up with some better bullshit than this, because my friends don't believe you. So instantaneously, that was deleted and a new projection we were watching. Okay. Same thing with the beings that people see. I've had a lot of different types of physical types of non-human intelligence. And in our research study, Beyond UFOs, which I'll talk about in a couple of minutes, we've had over 10,000 different types of quote unquote beings that people saw, different types. Okay. And then you realize that almost all of these experiences lasted for less than a minute. So then you ask the question, are these tens of thousands of different types of physical beings and non-physical beings? Because some were energy beings, some were shadow beings, that sort of thing. But we're talking about at least the physical ones. Are they coming to interact with us for less than a minute? Okay. And they're coming from different planets all around our universe for less than a minute, 30 seconds? Or is the explanation behind it a little bit more complex? Okay. What I learned was that these are interdimensional intelligences, and which have the ability to manipulate space-time, just like a near-death experience. Okay. A near-death experience, you're interacting with various forms of non-human intelligence, and there occurs a manipulation of space and time. Okay. And that really is the nature of our true reality. What we're seeing and interacting with is merely an illusion. It's Maya, okay, that the ancient Hindu texts discuss. So So my experiences since 2012 have just been an educational process. Now, let me give you the spirituality aspect of it, of how it gave me spirituality. I couldn't do the work that I'm doing now unless I realized that I'm an eternal spiritual being. Okay. But yet I was a complete atheist, had zero sense of spirituality. So uh, my experiences have been a series of orchestrated events. It's not synchronicity. That's not a powerful term enough. These are orchestrated one after another. And let me just give you the spirituality aspect of it. Okay. Um, After I saw that huge object in the sky, I'll call them consciousness aerial phenomena. I don't refer to them as UFOs. And I went to the computer and I realized now that this is a UFO was the focus, a consciousness aerial phenomenon. But that point, that date and time, I was still focusing on a materialist UFOs. That knowledge, that insight came about later on that this was something much more complex. And then on YouTube, all of a sudden, you know how a lot of YouTube images pop up, different ones. The one that popped up was an experiencer of a near-death experience.
Hmm.
I never heard of that in my life. Okay. And I was like totally captivated. So the whole night to like 7 in the morning, I was just listening to NDE experiencers telling their stories. I learned what it was. I would then retype, near-death experience stories and the whole night. Okay. So what I did then in the morning, I would order used NDE books from Amazon. And I ordered like 20 of them. Okay. So then I would devour them. It was starting like 4 hours a day. There would be 6 hours a day. And there would be 8 hours a day. Then 10 hours a day. It got to the point where it was more than 12 hours a day of reading these NDE and consciousness studies books. I became an NDE expert. Okay. And so then I'd never told anyone. My wife knew that I was reading all these books, and she understands English, my ex-wife, and she knew it was related to near-death experiences. But from her perspective, she was a hardcore Catholic, raised as a hardcore Catholic, so she saw everything through that prism. Um, and and so 4 months had passed by where she was telling me I need to go to a psychiatrist because I'm going crazy, because I wouldn't do any of my work, my personal work. I have my cases at home. Wasn't doing any of my cases, It was just NDE one after another and consciousness studies. And then 3 days in a row, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. This is all in 2012. December 21st, 2012. Supposed day of the Mayan calendar. Okay. That was Friday. The next day, Saturday, and the following day, Sunday. The very first three people I ever mentioned NDEs to, all of them had it. The first one was my daughter's pediatrician. And out of my voice came like a robotic voice. Because I brought there because my daughter had a fever. So she told me, I checked her ear, nose, and throat. We didn't see anything. We took her temperature. She doesn't have a temperature. Maybe it was like a 24-hour virus, And all of a sudden, excuse me, doctor, have you ever heard the term near-death experiences? I've just finished reading approximately 300 books on near-death experiences, and many were written by medical doctors such as yourself. Now, as I was saying this in my head, I was like, what the hell? I got another person inside my mind. I'm going crazy, like dual personality syndrome, whatever it might be. I said, what the hell is going on? I need to go see a psychiatrist, on Monday, find a doctor, go see him on Monday, because this is not normal. And so her eyes popped out, right? And so I said, oh my God, now she thinks I'm crazy, right? So I said, excuse me, doctor. I don't know why I said that. I apologize. She goes, there's no need to apologize. How did you know I had one? So then she goes and closes the door, and with my daughter next to me. And there's a reason my daughter was there, because she's had a lot of experiences now. Okay. And so this is like a preparation also for my daughter. And so she tells me about her NDE when she was a young child in Colombia. Okay. Um, and very, very detailed, her NDE. So I was like, holy shit, that was weird, man. That was weird. So then the next day, Sunday, it was at the local Catholic church, which I was forced to go because of my ex-wife. They had a dinner for the people that attended the Spanish Mass. So she had this lady from Mexico, because she's from Mexico, that she always sat with. And I finally got to see her husband. Her husband was an X-ray technician at one of the local hospitals. And he was born in Cuba like I was. And he came to the United States as a very young child. So then we quickly introduced each other. Then all of a sudden, excuse me, Max, have you ever heard the term near death? It was like verbatim, and his eyes pop out. I said, oh my God, I'm going crazy. What is this? It was like a robotic voice. And so I told him, I said, Max, I'm sorry, man. I don't know why I said that. I apologize. He goes, Ray, there's no need to apologize. I never told this to anyone. A year ago, my mother died in my arms. And I was called 911. I was giving her resuscitation, breathing her mouth and pounding her heart and the whole works. And then when she was revived at the hospital, I was floating above you. Okay. You told me this, you told me that, you told me that. You were crying on top of me. And all of a sudden, this big, heavy black man comes crashing through the door, followed by a short white woman with a blonde ponytail. But Mom, how do you know that? Those are the paramedics. I already told you I was floating above you. I was seeing everything. And then he told me the details of her NDE, of she met her deceased husband on the other side, all of that. And so I won't give you the details, these two NDE experiences, but I then thought to myself, it still hadn't hit me reading those 300 books and this thing happening 2 days in a row. Okay. And so I said, I need to tell this to my father, because my father is the Cuban Archie Bunker, goddamn this, goddamn that, so much. He had a very hard life, very, very hard life. And he was always cursing, screaming, that type of personality. And so he was very, very ill. He was like in 82 or 83 years old. He died like a year after this. And so I told him, I said to myself, I need to tell him what happened on Friday and what happened on Saturday, not all the other paranormal stuff, because that would, blown him away, but at least with the NDE stuff, to give him some spirituality. And so I told my mother, I said, Mom, help me get Pop dressed. And we can go outside to the porch and sit down at a lounge chair. And I need to have something very important to tell both of you. But it was basically meant for my father. So after I told him what happened on Friday and what happened on Saturday, he goes, that happened to me. I go, what? And I was like freaking out, And then he tells me the most in-depth NDE story of any of those books that I read. He was on the other side for 20 or 30 years. He told me time doesn't exist. What do you mean time doesn't exist? Because I was up there with God for like 20 to 30 years. I said, how do you know it was 20 or 30 years? Well, he showed me my life again. All the good things that I'd done and all the bad things, And he says, oh, God is pure love. And I'm like, what the, this is my father, telling me all of this. He's just telling me, on and on and on and on. And I was freaking out. And so it came to a point where he just wouldn't tell me anymore. He just stopped. And he just stared, just staring away, And I couldn't get anything from him. So I turned to my mother. I said, Mom, did you hear this before? She said when he was waking up from surgery, he had a quadruple heart bypass surgery. Okay. And then when he was waking up from that surgery, he was like, I got to tell you something. I got to tell you something. And she was like, go back to sleep. You coming out of anesthesia. Go back to, no, I got to tell you. I got to tell you. Go, you're coming out of anesthesia. Go back to sleep. Go back. Damn it, woman. You know, like, because he had been gone for 20 or 30 years and needed to tell her that story. And so she said, he told me everything that you just said and a lot more, you know. And so on my way home, I put down the windows and I looked up in the sky. There were not a lot of stars. It was because it was a city. It was Miami I lived in at that time. And so for the first time in my life, I talked to God. First of many times. And I said, I want to thank you because in a 4-month period, you've managed to teach me that we are all eternal spiritual beings and that you, as the mind of God, you know, not a religious figure, you know, that you exist. And I have that understanding that we're all eternal spiritual beings better than any Catholic priest in Miami. And for that, I want to thank you. And all of a sudden, it was like, boom, the light switch went on. You know, because before it was the academic aspects of NDEs, reading all these books by Raymond Moody, Dr. Kenneth Ring, Dr. Bruce Grayson, Dr. Jeffrey Long, who are now all of them are friends of mine, and they've written chapters in my books. Okay, Edgar Mitchell, together with Eben Alexander, founded an organization called Eternia, which dealt with near-death experiences. And they both wrote chapters for which were eventually published in A Greater Reality, volumes 1 and volume 2, which I can talk about that later on. So basically, the light was switched on now, okay? But I needed to have that understanding of spirituality, of the multidimensional aspects, virtual reality aspects of it, in order for me to continue the work that I am doing now. And my experiences were all based upon orchestrated events, and usually 3 days in a row. How I met Edgar Mitchell, Dr. Rudy Shields, emeritus professor of astrophysics from Harvard, and Mary Rodwell. She's a mystic. Okay, she worked with more than 4,000 UFO contact experiences. How I met them was all 3 days in a row. And that's how the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Foundation got started. And it started, there's another crazy story here. I was going to work at 8:30 in the morning on this congested highway. It's a main thoroughfare, Route 836, that takes you from the west side of Miami into downtown. I'm listening to National Public Radio. This man that was in school learning how to do documentaries. And so he was doing a documentary on his liposuction, on his fat. Okay. He was doing sculptures from his fat. And I'm listening to that and I'm saying, holy shit, this is really weird. You know, I was really into it. All of a sudden, I'm not my body anymore. Everything was all dark. Okay. Everything was all dark. There was no light, no nothing. It was just pure mind. Okay. I don't know what was happening. I was just observing, you know, looking around, and had like 360 vision all around. And all of a sudden, I'm inside. I see that I am inside a circle, you know, like a Ferris wheel, except it was huge. And there were like maybe 10 to 12 sections. You know, a real Ferris wheel has a lot of them, okay? But this is much more bigger. And inside each section, it was rotating slowly to the right. And I was seeing videos inside each section and getting these immense downloads of information. What you're watching now is called near-death experiences. What you're now watching is commonly called UFOs. What you're now watching is commonly called out-of-body experiences, okay? And then it would have these teachings about consciousness all through it all. And basically, let me cut to the chase here because this involved a lot of detailed information, was that humanity is seeing all of these experiences as separate and distinct from each other. But in fact, they're not. It's all one phenomenon under our greater reality, one phenomenon under consciousness. And they basically said it's your mission to inform humanity of the relationship between us, okay, consciousness, okay, and the cycle of death and rebirth, okay, because they had taught me all that, in the downloads. And so anyway, very, very detailed. I'm just giving you a little glimpse of it. The basic gist of it is that it taught me that all of these experiences are being seen as separate and distinct, but they're not. It's all one phenomenon under consciousness. And that there is a mind of God behind it, that there is spirituality. And so all of a sudden I'm back in my body and I'm hyperventilating. Like, what the just happened? And so I pulled over when I was able to, just to regroup myself. And I remember calling another experiencer that has had, crazy experiences like I have had. And I was telling her what just happened. And so I went to work. I was only there like 2 to 3 hours. I couldn't do any work. I was freaking out. So I decided to go back home. And I checked my email after a certain period of time, and I got a message from Mary Rodwell. She's from Australia. And she was responding to an email that I'd sent her 6 months ago, because I was reaching out back in October because I thought it was going crazy. So I sent emails out to a lot of people that were very knowledgeable about these fields. And so she responded back and she said, "Dear Ray, I responding to a message that you sent me 6 months ago, but it appeared on my inbox just now. It was held up for 6 months in cyberspace to the date of that experience." So then I told her what had been happening in the last 6 months and what happened today. And she was like, "Holy shit, Ray, I need to talk to you. This is crazy stuff, So we wound up speaking to like 1 a.m, my time, which was 1 p.m. for her in Australia. And I said, "Look, Mary, I got to go to work tomorrow. It's 1 or 1:30. Can we continue our conversations?" And she said, "Sure, yes." So we set up a time, the following day to continue our conversations. So that morning at 9:30 in the morning, I got a phone call. This is the following day. Okay, so this is the second day now. 24 hours after my out-of-body experience into this other multiverse. So, "Hello, is this Rey Hernandez?" "Yes." "Who's this?" "Dr. Rudy Shields." "Who?" "Oh, Mary didn't tell you that I was going to call you?" I said, "No." I said, "Who are you?" "Oh, I apologize. Dr. Rudy Shields. I'm an emeritus professor of astrophysics at the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics." And I'm like, what the fuck? This is like one of these Albert Einstein types is giving me a call at 9:30 in the morning. And he told me that he works with Mary Rodwell with experiencers that have gotten downloads of consciousness and advanced physics. Okay. And he had been working with Dr. John Mack for many, many years ago. He was a professor of psychiatry at the Harvard Medical School. He was a close friend of his. And so eventually what he told me was, "Ray, write down this telephone number." I said, okay, I wrote down the telephone number. It says, this is the telephone number of my mentor. I'm saying, who the hell is this guy's mentor? Professor of astrophysics at Harvard. I said, who's your mentor? Dr. Edgar Mitchell.
Hmm.
He says, what you got was a download of Dr. Edgar Mitchell's quantum hologram theory of consciousness. So he told me to call him, that he was going to give him a call to set up, our communication. But I was scared to give him a call. He was very, very famous. And he pretty much was one of the pioneers of consciousness research outside of the brain, around the world, because his focus has been on ESP, extrasensory perception, and so I finally gave him a call, like about 4 hours later. He says, "Oh, I just got off the phone with Rudy. Rudy told me a lot about you and your experiences, and what just recently happened, and that you're someone very, very important that I need to talk to." And he says, I live in West Palm Beach, which is a 90-minute drive from Miami. And he said, what are you doing tomorrow? I said, well, I was going to go to work. He said, well, can you take the day off? I said, sure. And come by my house at like 10 o'clock. And he gave me the address. So at 10 o'clock, I was at his house. And I stayed there like for 6 hours. And it was unbelievable meeting this man. And I eventually was at his house more than 20 different times. And he was like, Ray, you need to form a non-for-profit to implement the information you were given. Your mission. He said, your mission. And I'm like, this guy's freaking batshit crazy. What is he talking about? My mission. I had no idea. I was totally clueless. And then he says, don't worry, you'll figure it out. It always works that way, And Rudy Shields, the professor of astrophysics at Harvard, told me the same thing, And I'm like, these are two batshit crazy folks, But at that point, I was just awakening, And I realized that these people were just absolute geniuses. So a few days later, I woke up. It was Saturday morning. This must have occurred Wednesday or Tuesday, my meeting with Edgar Mitchell. So this is Saturday morning. I woke up and it was all in my head what we needed to do. What we needed to do was conduct the world's first comprehensive academic statistical research study of UFO contact experiencers. And I had the whole methodology in my mind, because I went to Berkeley for a PhD, able to do research, both statistical research, quantitative and non-quantitative, So the idea was to develop 2 quantitative research instruments, okay, and 1 qualitative, which is open-ended questions, research instruments. And so it was 6 pages, what I wrote, single spaced, and all of them read it. I sent one to Mary Rodwell as well in Australia. And Edgar, Rudy, and Mary was like, oh my God, Ray, you hit an absolute home run. This is unbelievable. Because there was 0 data on UFO contact experiences. What we had was basically abduction, information from abductions, which most of it is bullshit. Okay, there's numerous problems with hypnotic regression. Okay, numerous problems, and so they then began referring people that might be willing to help us, other professors, and other non-academic folks, people like Kathleen Martin, Rosemary Ellen Guiley, Dr. Leo Sprinkle, Dr. Bob Davis, who was a neuroscientist, a professor of neuroscience, and so it was a mixture of both academics and people who had been working with UFO contact experiencers for many, many, many years. Barbara Lamb, for example, well known. And so we all got together. We formed this committee, and it was called the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Free Foundation. And it took us 9 months to develop the details of our research study. And with all the help of all these PhD academics, we brought in other PhD academics, statisticians, 2 PhD statisticians, etc. And we wound up with 3 surveys, 2 of them quantitative, 1 was qualitative, open-ended questions. We had 70 open-ended questions. We received 10,000 pages for the open-ended questions. For the qualitative instrument, we had over 700 questions. Okay, and we used SurveyMonkey, an online program, to gather all that information. And we spent 4 years collecting that data. And we spent about a year writing the data. And we wound up with 4,350 individuals from over 125 countries. And that's just for the English language survey. We did it in multiple language. In the Spanish language survey, we had 1,200 individuals that took our Spanish surveys. And just very, very briefly, the survey findings, which are published in this book, Beyond UFOs. If anybody wants a copy of that, all of my books are free as PDF files. If you want to purchase a hard copy or a paper bound, then you got to pay for it, because that costs money. But as a PDF files, folks just go to our website. It's agreaterreality.com. agreaterreality.com. You could download all of my books for free as PDF files. So in that book, which is our very first book, what we discovered was that the UFO phenomenon was not necessarily a physical phenomenon. Okay, it was a paranormal phenomenon. Okay, these people were having every kind of paranormal experiences. Let me give you an example. Out-of-body experiences. 60% of these people were having out-of-body. No, 80%. 80% were having out-of-body experiences. Near-death experiences. 37% had NDEs. Okay, seeing a ghost or spirits or a dead person, again, another 60%. Received communications from that dead person, with like 2/3 of those. If you saw a dead person, the 2/3 likely that you're going to get a telepathic communication from that person. Okay, going to other multidimensional realities. 50% of these people having a miraculous medical healing on either you or an immediate member of your family. 50%. Okay. Chapter 6 of our book just dealt with miraculous medical healings. And that was written by a medical doctor who had a lot of UFO contact experiences, Dr. Joseph Burks, retired medical doctor. And this other man named Preston Dennett. He's written over close to 50 books on UFOs and the paranormal. Okay. And so you name the paranormal phenomenon, these people that took our surveys were having these experiences one after another. And what we realized was that the beings, it was like over 10,000 different types of beings. Okay. And there were certain subcategories, like for example, the energy being, right? There's thousands of different configurations of energy beings that people were seeing. I described my own, okay, which I called it an energy being because it was pure energy and it was a non-human intelligence. And there were humanoids. Oh my goodness, thousands of different humanoids. Okay, from the Nordic types, blonde hair, blue eyes, 7 feet tall with the blue skin type suit. All different types of humanoid types of figures. And with the grays, there's the short grays, the tall grays, middle level, and they all came in different shapes and colors. Some wore hats, some wore baseball hats, other had a top hat. I mean, different insignias. I mean, which is thousands and thousands of diverse. Some people saw like a mucus, like a booger hanging in the corner of their living room that was communicating with them, mind to mind. So once we put all of this together, we realized that the youth, what these people were perceiving, okay, our hypothesis that these were holographic projections, because most of these experiences did not last more than a minute. It's like seeing a ghost. Yes.
Can we do little questions and then come right back to this point?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm going to back up a lot. I will switch to very quick topics, all the way back to your daughter being behind you and seeing in the sky, and you had your friend coming in with parking tickets.
Yeah.
Tell us about your wife's intuition. Has she always been intuitive since she was a kid?
Okay.
What is her perspective on everything? In under a few minutes, though, does she have a certain way she rolls? Is it angels, religious oriented? How do you describe your wife?
Well, all of this came about because of my ex-wife. Later on, I found out that she had been playing with little people. They were human beings, but they were just tiny. All of her childhood.
Hmm.
Not one time or two times, it was like throughout her whole childhood. I didn't know that until many years after these experiences took place.
Like fairies or other types of beings?
Oh, it's someone like you, except you're little. You're 2 feet tall.
Okay.
Okay, and they would dress normal,
Hmm.
and she'd been interacting with them, all of her life, from when she was can remember for the first time till about 11 or 12 years old, and that's
So
a very
she's
common pattern.
extremely open and seeing, hearing, feeling.
Yeah, but she interprets everything via her Catholic
Hmm.
projection. Like, for example, when her dog was very, very ill, she was praying all night the night before to the Virgin Mary.
Hmm.
Okay, La Virgen de Guadalupe, the Virgin Mary of Guadalupe, all night praying. And I was like, as a good atheist, pray all you want, nothing's going to happen. Tomorrow we're going to euthanize her. And so that's how this being came about that we saw, because she reached out
Hmm.
with her mind to the Virgin Mary.
And we're going to keep coming back to other stuff. Now, this is not meant to make light of anything, but your friend with the parking tickets, did you get them all resolved? And did he, after that day, did he really not get another parking ticket after that?
Well, I don't know if he got any other parking tickets. I know that he told me he went to court. I had scheduled a date for the court, and he paid them all,
Good.
to the judge. And but he made a drawing together with my daughter and his wife, and they were all very, very, very similar.
Yep.
Okay, but the confusion was that they only made one drawing. They didn't make two separate drawings, because remember I told you it was two separate objects.
Hmm.
Sort of they combined it into one,
Mhm.
and but it was very, very similar to the one my daughter drew. They all drew it independently.
For your pet that was healed, your interaction with the pet, the dog, how do you describe the communication? Were you fully able to then, from then on, have greater awareness and connection and full on hearing, like, the dog's a third grader, you hear, Daddy, Daddy, I want to go outside. What was your interaction like before, after, any difference, or were you always very connected to your pets?
No, no, and not even afterwards. My wife was. She would talk to trees. She would hug trees. She would talk to them.
Have you
So
had experiences with trees yet?
nope, nope,
Okay.
nope,
All
nope,
right.
nope. I mean,
Uh,
I've only had what I've had, but my wife has had a very special series of experiences. So she's would see these beings that would have a long tail, and they would like jump over the fence.
hmm,
This is after these experiences,
hmm.
and I would see shadow people,
Ooh.
streaks. One time we're in a Zoom call, and with two other ladies that were experiencers. They were volunteers for the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Foundation. All of a sudden, this being, I'm looking at the camera. I have it on blur, for the background, but that time it was straight picture, and it went, phew, and I looked at it, and I was able to see the blackness of it. Image goes straight through a window, but this is one of those tall windows that are like the size of a whole wall, And and so this lady starts screaming, ah, what is that, Ray? What is that? I said, ah, don't worry, it's just a shadow person. I've seen thousands of those. So it was a lot of weird experiences.
Well, I'm going to jump around a little still, so forgive me for this. You had mentioned a point where it was so low that had you thrown a rock, you probably could have hit it. I wanted to just touch on this, not in any serious way, but for helping people to grasp what really can't be grasped. But had somebody taken a rock and had a Major League Baseball arm, and everybody was okay with this, you're not causing any harm. If you had thrown the rock, would it have actually hit something? How do you want to describe that? Had someone been able to pick up a rock, they had a baseball pitcher arm, would it have bounced off? Would you have seen it bounce off? Could you describe
Well,
something about that? You have a good way of describing stuff.
as I said before, the hypothesis that I came up with after many of these types of experiences, that these were projections into your mind, just like the mosquitoes,
Hmm.
right? I could have sworn, if I would have had my last dollar, I would have put my last dollar that those mosquitoes were real,
Yep.
but they weren't. Okay, these are projections into your mind, just like our reality.
Right.
Like we're having a conversation here. This is an illusion. Okay, we perceive them as physical
Hmm.
because we perceive our reality via our five senses. So if I would have thrown it, um, it would have just gone straight through.
Okay.
These are just images.
And you have mentioned a bunch of folks, some of whom have been guests on the show. And I think we talked about that in our emails back and forth months ago. But I wanted to just do a shout out to about five names. Some of them you're fans of or friends with. But I wanted to mention Sheila Seppi. When you mentioned Barbara Lamb, she's been a guest on the show twice.
Yes.
And she's more ET, walk-ins, and less near death and everything else. But the rest will be mostly near death. Ingrid Hankala Garcia Hansen, if I got the names in order. She's been on at least twice or three times, three near-death experiences, and I believe originally in Colombia, if I got it right, Colombian Navy. She was head of their marine biology department before coming over to America and working for NASA and the Navy as a oceanographer, among other things. Raymond Moody, who you had mentioned, was kind enough to be a guest about a year and a half ago. Yvonne Quezon up in Canada, doctor and another formal title. I forget if it was psychologist, but doctor, five near-death experiences, including a plane crash, where unfortunately,
Oh
as a
yes,
as a
I know who
doctor on
you're
the medical
referring to.
plane, yeah, a
That
lot of
that's
them.
that's Yvonne Kaysen, Dr. Kaysen.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And so she, bunch of beautiful things. She's been on at least three times
She's
here.
had UFO related experiences.
And that'll be the reason we have her on next to talk about that. That of all
But
the
but
things we
she
didn't
she
talk
doesn't
about,
talk about it publicly.
yeah, we'll see if we can
I
get.
don't know if it changed.
Yeah, Michelle Clare in Arizona, three near-death experiences, and she's a lot of fun, beautiful, and how she handles everything. And Evan Alexander and his partner Karen Newell have been on at least three times collectively. So I mentioned those folks. What I wanted to mention was Dr. Karen Wyatt. She was episode 110, August 30th of 2024. Physician, retired now. And I took photos a long time ago of just angels, loving beings, but in light energy form, there's a joy, a silhouette of an angel who's my guardian angel, but she knew that figure to be her guardian angel right away. Four archangels in rainbow pie slice form, and hundreds and thousands of other photos, fairies, blah, 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 Plato. She recognized that photo as her guardian angel, and she had shared a story when she was 7, 8, or 9 in bed, safe house, safe bed. She wakes up and a figure all in white is at the foot of her bed. They interact. She wants to be a physician after that for her career, and she sticks with it and is very love centric. So even in her first day of residency, before becoming a full doctor, they asked everyone gathered together, I guess, at the hospital, "Why are you here?" And she's still very idyllic. Puts her hand up and says, "Love." And from then on, she clams up and learns to play the game. A lot of doctors, though, having difficulties with their patients, would send their tough luck cases to her, and she would figure things out. Even the doctors themselves over the decades would come to her because of whatever her heart-centered process was. She paid attention more. I don't know. She's retired now, and she got a chance to meet her guardian angel in full human form. I knew she took the walks on the beach. I suggested she just, because people can have a full-on human experience. I've seen angels in human form in Stockholm, Vegas, New York, Austin, Hawaii, and it's a long story, more than a minute, sometimes hours or half an hour of interaction. Um, she got to sit with her guardian angel in full human form. You know, you pinch them, they're not going to say ouch. They pinch you, you say ouch. And she got a full half an hour experience chatting side by side, sitting on the beach, Redondo Beach. And so that's where I wanted to come back as if we're throwing a rock. Is everything a hologram and therefore it's all a figment of the imagination, but without putting it quite that way? Or are there cutout exceptions? Like if a Pleiadian introduces themselves to you or an Arcturian, are we going to, and there's Jamie Foxx out there who talks about, you know, the filmmaker, the phenomena, or if it's Skywalker Ranch, they refer to it in a kind of a collective way as well as a unified consciousness or something. Um, how can you explain how you handle when it's beyond a minute and those direct encounters, or it's your grandfather that you get to reconnect with? You get to see you're very religious. You get to see Jesus, Mary, Archangel Michael, and then your grandfather shows up who's passed over, your favorite figure on the planet. You know they're around. You've had feathers, nickels, dimes, a hand on your shoulder, a dream. Can you, how do you paint that picture and explain it to us with everything you've been doing? How do you, I think I've made the question good here, but how do you like to cover all that?
Okay. Yeah. First of all, these concepts are extremely difficult for
Hmm.
someone that's not used to think that way. Okay.
And can you just explain that a little more so we know which side of the fence
Okay.
we're on? Yeah,
When
thank you.
when 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 we're talking about the concepts of the multiverse, okay, when we're talking about concepts of consciousness, concepts of time, et cetera, uh, concepts of non-human intelligence, our tendency is to view all of this via our five senses. Okay. What I did is in the A Greater Reality book series, we have 5 volumes, each of them 800 pages.
Hmm.
Okay. The first 2 volumes, volumes 1 and volume 2, are theoretical in nature and academic. They are written primarily by PhD academics and medical doctors, okay, with some researchers that not necessarily college professors, but these are intellectuals. And those 2 books are on the topic of what is consciousness, okay? What is the nature of our reality? And while they all take a different take on it, they all share commonalities. Okay. For example, Raymond Moody, Eben Alexander, myself, Jeffrey Mishloff, Dr. Jeffrey Long, another expert on near-death experiences, um, uh, Tom Campbell, who's one of the world's leading authorities on out-of-body experiences, and he worked with Robert Monroe for many, many, many years. Um, all of us, many others, share the same common thesis, which is projected in volumes 1 and volume 2. And that is that our reality is a simulated reality. Okay. What that means is that our reality is totally outside of our physicality. Okay. Our 5 senses. It's much more profound. You could, if people have a basic understanding of near-death experiences, that'll give you a better understanding, because near-death experiences, you're outside of physical reality, okay, of space and time. You're outside of that, and that's what I mean by virtual. You're inside the mind of God, pretty much, okay. And the other basic concept is that this reality is spiritual, in a sense that it has to do, like we're talking about ourselves, as eternal spiritual beings, that there's a recycle of reincarnation taking place. when we die, when we're born, for example, if you could think of God as one big gigantic brain, the brain has billions of neurons. Okay. We are one of those neurons. We are an individuated unit of consciousness. When we get born, part of that neuron remains with God, but the other part comes into this physical reality to learn, to grow, to make mistakes.
And can I ask, is that neuron, is it possible that that's the soul as we view it? And I'm going to pause and make this two part because and I've got to go on a backstory for about 30 seconds. I've
Yeah.
never really been interested that much in past lives or what I'll call concurrent lives, since I think they're all happening personally at the same time
Yes, that's
and time
correct.
and space. Yeah. But that's not my thing. And yet I've got an angel named Charlotte who was kicking out 10 years ago, different past life experiences. And at some point, enough came out where I'm like, hey, there's overlap here. How? And I had a guest come on the show out of 500 tapings, at least 300 guests. Somebody beautifully said it, which is, picture your soul, and it's like a hand, and each finger is a sliver of the light of the soul, can be in different human experiences overlapping from our perspective at a time level. So you're a Native American in America and it's 1860 overlapping with your being a healer in Germany. And so there is no contradiction, but you wanted that experience. You wanted the contrast of being a healer, but having it this way, but having it being a formal medical professional down in Peru. You might be in three places at once at the same time because of the juxtaposition. And so I wanted to put that out there as, is your neuron possibly the soul concept as well? And you're very good at painting a lot of the pictures here. Could you run with that?
Yeah, it's a, you can think of it as a soul, spirit. It's the eternal essence of who you really are.
Okay.
Okay. But you're always attached to the mind of God.
Yeah.
There's never a detachment. What it is once you get born, there's the perception of detachment.
Mm.
But for example, when,
Duality.
yeah, but when, for example, people have a perception of experiences that are going to take place in the future, okay, precognitive type of experiences, is because you're able to tap into the mind of God, into consciousness itself, and you get that download of information of things that are going to occur, um, and life experiences, different types of past lives. Okay, people get the downloads of that information, but you could think of it as a soul or a spirit of what remains after your body dies.
And Ray, can we're going to jump again. Apologies for all the jumping around,
Yeah.
but for you personally, for your personal, individual, unique life path, your personal expansion and growth here and here, I'm going to read two quotes, but I would love for you to show us somehow, whatever you're comfortable with, talking about where you're at today, philosophically, spiritually, what you allow for, but in your words. And I'm going to do two quotes. One's from Story Musgrave, the NASA astronaut. I've always loved this quote. Getting out of the comfortable path, that's what exploration is all about. And then the other one's an India quote that I think everyone's heard by now, but maybe not. A mind that is fast is sick. A mind that is slow is sound. A mind that is still is divine. And between those two, could you take us through your personal awareness now? What are you allowing for? What are you appreciating? And where are you today versus the atheist of, 30 years ago when you were five?
Well, I wish I was at the point of a stillness mind, because you're at then the point of a meditative guru, where you're totally outside of your physicality. That's the goal, of turning into your essence of who you are. But I'm nowhere near that. Um, but at this point, I'm just learning and processing. Um, so it's still engaging, and uh, I learn more from individuals like yourselves, other experiencers from their experiences, because no one really has the final, word as to the complex nature of our reality. but it's certainly much more complex than just, people talking about the paranormal as being separate and distinct.
Mm.
Certainly, UFOs being a separate and distinct phenomenon from the multiverse, from consciousness, from near-death experiences, etc. I've, gone way beyond that. So at this point, it gives me a lot of frustration because to me, it's very, very simple, very, very basic. But to a lot of people, they still don't get it.
Mm.
Let me give you a little quick story of this, right? And I mention it in my book, A Greater Reality, One Man's Journey of Discovery, where I talk about my experiences. I finally wrote it down about a year and a half ago. Um, I had gone to numerous UFO conferences, none of the big ones, because I was not focusing on pure physical UFOs. Okay. Like, for example, the Arkansas UFO conference with Dolores Cannon. She started that, and other smaller conferences. And what I realized was that these speakers that were invited to speak were really clueless as to the complexities
Mm.
of the UFO phenomena because they were focusing on the physicalism aspect of it. The people in the audience, the experiencers, they had a much better understanding because these were people that were having one paranormal experience after another after they saw a UFO, you know? So I learned from these people. I would talk to them, engage with them. I would never be in a hotel in a bar having drinks like a lot of folks, I would want to sit down with someone over coffee, and let's talk. Tell me about your experiences. What were they? What did you learn? What are your insights? And so I realized that these people who are the so-called experts in the field of ufology were pretty much clueless, okay? With the NDE phenomenon, again, I'm not talking about most of the NDE experts, but a lot of people who run these NDE organizations. For example, I went to the International Association of Near-Death Studies, okay? Yvonne Kaysen told me one of the reasons she left the International Association of Near-Death Studies was because these people were so close-minded.
Hmm.
What the hell does NDEs have to do with UFOs? What the hell does NDEs have to do with out-of-body experiences? What the hell does NDEs have to do with channeling, et cetera, et cetera? But those people are still very limited in how they approach the NDE phenomenon. I gave a lecture, myself and this other professor, in Miami in this conference on out-of-body experiences. It was an organization that was in Portugal and in Brazil. The International Association of Consciology, I think it was. It was a big major out-of-body group. Again, they had the same mindset. What the hell does out-of-body experiences have to do with near-death experiences?
Hmm.
Now, we understand a lot of people have NDEs, go out of their body. That's like the first step, but those are two separate phenomena. UFOs, what the hell does that have to do with UFOs? And then another conference that I went to two consciousness studies conferences. And those are basically neuroscientists and physicists, okay? Talking about the concept of consciousness, but from their disciplines of neuroscience and physics. Those people are totally clueless, because their focus and my approach and the focus of all the people that wrote articles in our book, all the other academics were night and day because they were materialists. Okay.
Yeah, and that was something that I did mean to ask earlier. There's a materialist science, which seems to be the dominant currency out
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
correct? Okay, and that's
Correct.
something
Yeah.
where you and Eben and many others are trying to break out of that and get a
Correct.
broad openness,
Yes.
open-mindedness. Okay.
Yeah. The book one and book two of the Greater Reality book series are to present theories of consciousness and theories of the paranormal that are non-materialist approaches, and so they all take a different take, but in essence, it's all very, very similar. Um, I would encourage all your audience members to read an article by Dr. Edgar Mitchell, which is in either in book one or book two of our Greater Reality book series. Also, Thomas Campbell. Thomas Campbell. Listen to his theories. And that was, he wrote a book, very thick book, over 700 pages, titled My Big Toe, My Big Theory of Everything. But the problem was that it's so abstract, so difficult to read, that he disengaged with a lot of these folks. So I asked him, look, Tom, can you do something for me that's 25 pages? You know, very short and to the point. And he did. And it's published in our book. So it's a very concise understanding of the theory of Tom Campbell. And I agree with 100% of what he wrote, 110%. And including the concept of love. Okay. Near-death experiences and near. Whoop.
I had this Thomas Campbell.
Yes, yes. Yep. But not too many people can understand him.
And I better back up and do a little, not disclaimer, but I'll mention I've been doing this like 15 years, but I help hold the space for people to have a direct experience with angels or loving beings, but they started sharing galactic backgrounds. Some are very cosmic, others a Pleiades background, whatever, Orion, Andromeda. But light beings, your relatives, your passed over pets, never do relatives first. It's a direct experience. I don't see people's questions or answers. They get their own, they ask their own questions, they get their own answers, they get hugs. Hugs can become healing. I do baby steps to see a little bit of light. They can see angels as light first, but if they want to look out a window, some people need 25 houses distance or 2 Walmart parking lots to see. The more nervous the brain is, the further away they're more comfortable. But people can do this jointly. So again, I feel like I'm off the hook for having to worry about this. But I wanted to mention everyone's different. Like if it's Jeffrey Mishlove, I got to have whiskey with him via Zoom. There was a point where maybe 5 years ago, I was like, oh, I just want to have whiskey with someone to be able to chat who's super knowledgeable and ask a lot of questions. Robert Baer, co-founder with Yvonne of the new organization up in Canada. I think I got the name right. Baer, B-A-R-E, who left
Well, I'm
IAN.
not familiar with that person.
He's the other gentleman that they both got this. Yvonne and him got the idea at the same time, and they were both on the board at IANDS
Oh,
and
okay, okay.
started Spiritual Awakenings International
Yes.
together. He's been on twice, and so he's sharing amazing. He had two different types of near-death experiences on the plane, and then later at the hospital. But he's taking steps on the air. He's sharing angel stories back in his past. But a lot of my guests take steps on air. They're not just, if I put my hand out, you feel my energy, but they're looking at a photo, getting an answer, get a hug. They can look up, see light. They can look out a window and see. Britt Elders, I wanted to mention, she's CEO of ShirleyMacLaine.com, the actress, but her dad was a NASA rocket scientist, worked with the famous Werner von Braun. Von Braun, if I said the name right. She shares a UFO story where they all pull over, everybody's pulled over on the highway, they see the UFO go by. But on air, she's been on at least 3 times. She gets to look out in Arizona and see in the sky ships come in. Now that might have been a little more holographic because you're making an instant request. But you do get direct contact in a friendly, non-jumpy, non-worrisome. You're not going to beat yourself up over it for days. You might have your jaw drop a little. It's a lot. And it's almost like a twister wheel is the way I'm going to describe it. It doesn't matter your practice area, if you're a doctor, neuroscientist, whatever. It's almost which day of the week or in which moment did we catch the person? Are they up here or are they down here? If they're down here, smooth sailing. If they're up here, good luck trying to crack that egg. So can you talk to us about direct experiences more at the heart level? What have you learned about compassion, kindness, just being open, a little less thinking, a little more allowing, and give us the patented Rey Hernandez. Yeah, it's about the heart to some degree. What have you learned about the heart, compassion, letting go, and allowing with a capital A?
Well, that's a part that I still need to grow in, because I'm still pretty much a pragmatist, at heart, and in many ways a materialist academic, even though my mindset is outside of material reality.
Yep.
but that other those aspects of what I need to learn. But that's changed recently via paranormal experiences that I have had.
Well,
For example, how I met my wife, it was all via the heart.
aw,
Um,
is your
and
wife today, is she intuitive?
oh yes, yes, yes. She has precognitive dreams of things that are going to happen.
Ooh. And you
That
pay
sort of thing.
attention to those. You do not put up a fight, right?
Oh no, 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 no. I know it's all real. For example, let me tell you the setup job. Okay. Um, I go visit my mother. She's now 94, but this is when she was 92. This is in Miami. I went to visit her. And I had been dating, a series of ladies here, but what they heard my accent, they know I'm not from Colombia. They say, oh, he's a gringo and he's got money. So they start asking me and once for monies. And as soon as I hear that, it's like, bye bye, out the door. And so it popped in my mind. I need to get a gold ring. And I've never been a materialist person. I couldn't care about a gold ring, but it was like pounding in my head, a gold ring, a gold ring. Uh, and and I wasn't going to spend, monies for a gold ring. So I said, let me go to a pawn shop. Okay. And so this is a Thursday night. I wrote 4 pawn shops around my mother's house. Then I'm going to go the next day after 12 o'clock. Uh, all right. I don't, you learn to pay attention to this constant messages that are being put into you. For whatever reason, I got to get a gold ring, right? So then at 12 o'clock the next day, my mom is screaming. And I'm saying, oh, I ran to her because I thought she had fallen down because these were screens. She's sitting in her bed. She says, open this tobacco box. This is where her father, she keeps his poetry. As an old man, he learned how to read and write, and then later to write poetry,
Mm.
very sophisticated poetry. And so she would read his poems, every couple of months. She says, open it up. And I opened it up. You see that? Was right on top of his poems. And I said, and I already knew, there's an A port,
Mm.
an A port. These are things that just materialize into your reality. And I said, can I have it? She says, yours. It's a men's ring. So I put it on. Perfect fit. It was a high school graduation ring from 1962 in Puerto Rico. Now, my grandfather is not Puerto Rican, he's Cuban. And he came to the United States in 1965, you know? So I asked my mom, I said, how many times have you opened that box? Oh, numerous times. Did you ever find the ring in there? Never. What did you find it? Right on the top. So then I said, holy shit, I had never talked to God and made a request of God.
Mm.
I would talk to God, but I would never have the presumption to request things. I never did that. So then, boom, I can ask things, God, and God can provide them. Okay, you just need to ask.
And here's a very specific question, and then we will start to wrap it up, but
Yeah,
you're invited
because
back on anytime.
I
Finish
want to
up.
get
Yeah.
to the point of the
Yep.
ring, of why that was important. It wasn't for the ring. It was a setup job. It was an orchestrated event, right? So I'm going back to Colombia, and I said, "Holy shit! I can talk to God, make a request, and maybe it'll come true." So I said, "God, I've been here already, for 2 years. I've been dating all these beautiful ladies, but they're so materialistic. They just hear your accent, they think you're a gringo with a lot of money, and I'm tired. Right now, I'm almost 70 years old. I said, I just want a life partner, someone to love, to be the rest of my life with. Okay. And I said, I don't care if she's tall, short, skinny, fat, beautiful, or ugly, black, brown, or white, whatever. I just want a good woman. that's going to be my life partner. I said, can you please help me? Well, guess what? The next day, I met this very beautiful um, lady in the supermarket cashier, and I knew that she was too young, you know. So I said, "May I ask you how old you are?" She says, "Oh, I'm 21 years old." I said, "My God, that's my daughter's age." I said, "You must have an aunt, a sister, a cousin, somebody that you can hook me up with. I'm lonely here, you know. I want to meet a good woman, you know." And then the very next day, I got an email from her sister. Now, I invited her to go out to this very, very fancy restaurant, nice restaurant that they have live music. Okay. And so it's like the cream of the crop of the restaurants here, but they're not expensive here, you know, they're not very expensive. And so I invited her, and she was very, very poor, very, very humble, you know, grew up in abject poverty, whatever. So she was like, you know, overwhelmed by all of this. Now, I went outside to pay for her cab, and when I saw her, not once, but twice, I heard a voice. You're going to marry him. Not once. They waited like a minute or so. Then it said again, you are going to marry her. And I said, holy shit. Okay, this is it, you know? And so, and in fact, we did marry.
I love it. That's
And and
beautiful.
and she's been, you know, the love of my life. I've never had a relationship like her. I love her, you know? And she told me that she gets precognitive dreams. One time she had a dream with her grandmother saying goodbyes to her. She's saying, I'm going to die. I'm here to say goodbye to you. And then very detailed, lengthy conversation. She goes, Ray, this is weird. I had a very, very detailed dream, but it was like I was right there with my grandmother. I was right there, you know? And then that was on Sunday night. The next night she woke up, you know, this Monday morning. She goes, Ray, I had the same exact dream again. And it was much more vivid. It was like I'm with my grandmother and she's saying her goodbye. She's telling me that she loves me, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Very, very detailed. And the next morning, she received a phone call at 7:30 in the morning from her father that her grandmother passed away. So she gets tons of those.
And Ray, I'm going to do a quick uh, off off the reservation tangent, but with this angel, she's popped in at different points in my life, and it's not interference. It's helping me hit some waypoints that I'm supposed to hit, whether it's relationships or other stuff. So she's shown up in human form at a Northwest Austin Starbucks. I'm meeting with my book editor. I see Austin, Texas has 13 different types of people, from cowboys to oil types to
Yeah,
venture
I used
capitalists.
to live there.
Yeah. And
I worked in Austin.
And she's dressed in Santa Fe, New Mexico garb, totally out of place. I've never seen that in 10 plus years there. Never seen anybody dressed like this. She's facing the wrong way at the front of the Starbucks. Now, my mind's eye looking back at the memory, it's 200 feet across. It's not, no Starbucks is that big. I'm sitting in a raised upright round table with my book editor talking about glow stick Zen. And that's a fellow runner I'm with, but she's super sharp. And at some point, she's never stopped staring, drinking coffee. And I've pointed her out, and she's just staring the whole time. It was meant to lock in that memory. And I ask the important questions, not who killed Kennedy, but if angels are in human form, do they actually drink the coffee here? And the answer is yes. House rules. So I thought I'd mention that. But what I wanted to ask was back to that other question of where you're at today. Um, God, and it doesn't have to be religious. It could be Mary, Jesus, Muhammad,
No,
Buddha.
it's not religious at all.
Yeah, but for you personally, do angels exist? And it's okay if not, if it's beings or it's the greater consciousness.
Yes, yes, they do.
Okay, and have you met? Can you tell us
Yes.
an angel story, like your guardian angel, or this is where I want to get one of these in, and then we'll have you back if, with your permission, anytime you want to take more time to share whatever you'd like. But tell us an angel story. But go first philosophically. When did you first know angels might exist? We probably should have started with this. And is it your guardian angel? Which angel? Archangel Michael? Tell us some
No,
more.
it has nothing to do with archangels and from a metaphysical sense, you know. But this definitely is um where it's commonly called an angelic being,
Mm.
but it's non-human intelligence that's uh, with special gifts, special powers. And I had like a 4 year relationship with this person, and it's detailed in my book. I'll send it to you.
Okay.
A Greater Reality.
Well,
Um,
tell us, give us one flavorful example where you got assisted or you're like, whoa, you had your eyes opened on a particular front.
oh, it's very lengthy. Maybe when I come back, I'll tell you. But it's basically he would always test me out, uh, and um, and I finally I accepted the person. Then give me another test. I accepted it. Finally, another confirmation, and then there was this one last final confirmation. It was like, I give up. I give up. You're real.
Mhm.
I give up. You're real.
What? Um,
And it's in my book. A Greater Reality: One Man's Journey of Discovery.
that there's an angel named Dale in my world. Think of Greg Kinnear, but if you can't remember that actor, he said George Clooney reluctantly, but skinny, very nice man. But when I saw him in Austin, Texas, it was a January when it was 70 degrees. He was dressed in scrubs from the neck down and looked like Dave Matthews. A lot of facial hair for a doctor, but perfectly manicured Hollywood style. I'm walking out of, not to sound cliche, a crystal shop at like 4 in the afternoon. Lazy sun, perfect still air. My BMW old 1990, old 28-year-old or something, 20-year-old vehicle is across the street. I got to get there. I'm walking Austin style. Spent 20 years in New York City. I look over, I make eye contact with this guy. His eyes do that acknowledgement thing, and I felt like lightning going through my body. I'm now power walking New York City style to get to that crosswalk button. I wasn't supposed to talk with him, but he's standing right next to me a little while later by the pole, and all my brain is thinking is cross the street, get to the car. The rest of me is getting sizzled, and he just wanted to say hi. And I've seen him in other places too, popping in. So with that, can you gently help the audience allow for more in their own individual reality? Let's have you not go Tony Robbins on us, but what advice do you have for us to pump the brakes on the thinking and to just allow more? The universe is way bigger than we can grasp. What's Rey
Yeah.
Hernandez's advice?
Well, just to let you and the audience members know, my wife has been, edging me. She has lunch already done, and
Oh,
she's encouraging me to
we're gonna
go.
hop off in
But
30 seconds now.
but basically, everyone needs to understand. And again, it's not Ray Hernandez saying this. This is all of the near-death experiencers, the vast majority of them, and the NDE researchers.
Mm.
Okay, we're talking about Raymond Moody, Dr. Bruce Grayson, Dr. Kenneth Ring, Dr. Jeffrey Long. Okay, these are the major NDE researchers that are friends of mine. Dr. Eben Alexander. Um, what they all say is that the purpose of life is to learn how to love.
Yes.
That's it. Just simple. We're here to learn how to love, but yet it's the most difficult task for humanity to master
Ray,
or to embrace.
that's absolutely beautiful. We're going to get you on again in the future, but to remember Raymond Moody and his co-author P and P for the first edition.
Perry.
Yeah,
Paul
Paul
Perry,
Perry.
yes.
They
Yes.
got to smell a little bit of sage. So did Evans, taking steps with angels with me on before, and Karen many times. I'm gonna just light a little sage, and we're gonna wrap this up in a minute flat. Um, you have the chance to catch sage in Colombia. If people haven't done this before, there's no time and space. You're already smelling it, connected to all there is. Let angels, the universe, however you want to say it, help you smell the sage. Red-tailed hawk feather, a little bit of sage. Ray, let us know if you're getting sage, sage and flowers, or even a warm, fuzzy hug around you from your relatives, angels, and other loving beings, love and above only. Let us know what you're getting in Colombia. Are you getting
Yep.
something?
Yep. Yep.
Okay, and I'm going to do a very last act and we'll sign off. And I apologize to your wife for holding up the lunch, but you've been fantastic. I'm going to do one last thing. I'm going to put my hand up in Texas. Do you mind putting your hand up and see what you can feel? Try too hard, you'll feel sparkles on the toes. See if you feel a warmth and energy, and let me know when you've got a little buzz going. Ooh, my hand got hot. What do you feel right now?
energy connection.
Okay, and my microphone's below today. I'm gonna push or whoosh, let angels and other loving beings come in. And if you could get extra, you don't have to share the extra. It'll be a whoosh of love. And did you get something?
Let me give you something back.
You'll be my first guest to do this. Hmm. Rey Hernandez, thank you very much for being on the Angels Positivity and Love show. You shared a lot. I hope you'll come back in the future. It was just wonderful meeting for the very first time. Thank you.
Bye.